kind of like the writer of 2 Kings, he decides that it's time for him to write an editorial. And so he starts writing down everything that he kind of thinks about the history that he's brought out up to that point. And then he turns the corner into 18 and Hezekiah, and it's kind of neat because he has quite a lot of, you might say, dark or difficult things to say about Israel and Judah in 17, but once we turn the corner and are in 18 next week, Hezekiah's a neat guy. He's really a great king, and I think you'll find him refreshing and fun to watch. Of course, like all of them, he makes mistakes, and we'll see that as well. 2 Kings, the 16th chapter, first verse. In the 17th year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, Ahaz, the son of Jotham, king of Judah, became king. So, to make it clear, Pekah, the son of Remaliah, is king in Israel when Ahaz becomes king of Judah. So 17 years, Pekah had been king when Ahaz became king. So Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem, and he did not do what was right in the sight of the Lord his God, as his father David had done. But he walked in the way of the kings of Israel. In other words, now don't forget Ahaz. You got to keep him separate in your mind from Ahab. Ahab is a king in the north. Ahaz is a king in the south. So but he walks as if he were king of the north. Ahaz has the nastiness of the northern kings. He walked in the way of the kings of Israel, and even made his son pass through fire, according to the abominations of the nations whom the Lord had driven out from before the sons of Israel. Is there any guess as to what this may mean? The son made his son pass through fire.
Walk on coals.
Huh?
Walk on coals.
Yeah, well, something like that. It's not well known exactly what it was. It's something thought that it's actual sacrifice. Some have thought that it's, when it says pass through fire, that it's a matter of passing the child through flames, and that this is somehow an appeasement to the God that's being worshipped in the process. So pretty nasty stuff. He sacrificed and burned incense on the high places and on the hills and under every green tree. So he didn't have... One of the interesting things about the people in this time was they did not like religion. They loved religion. They were religious people. But they were religious sort of without any fidelity. They didn't stay true to one God. They were multi-God people, and so was Ahaz. Then Rezin, king of Aram, you may remember Aram is up here in this green area. This is Aram. So Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah. So it's this nation here, Aram, and combining up with Israel. That's where Pekah was king. So Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to wage war. And they besieged Ahaz, but could not overcome him. So there again you have this king and the king of this area. So all of what you could muster for soldiers and so forth came down here to Jerusalem and were against Ahaz. That's where Ahaz, this king that is not being very faithful to God, that's where he is. At that time, Rezin, king of Aram, recovered Elath for Aram. this is that at the end of the conduit of the upper pool, I think it kind of lays out, to me, it lays out a picture in that if there's a conduit of the upper pool, it must be some kind of pipe or perhaps a canal that transfers water. So conduit of the upper pool on the highway to the fuller's field. So this is somewhere, there's water here, and he's on the way to the fuller's field. Fuller's field, we know what fuller is? No? That's where you bleach out your clothes. So it's a laundry thing going on. So apparently Ahaz is taking a walk down past where they're doing the laundry, and say to him, take care and be calm, have no fear, and do not be faint-hearted because of these two stubs of smoldering firebrands on account of the fierce anger of Rezin of Aram and the son of Remaliah, which, as you probably can pick up by now, that's Pekah, the king of Israel. So Isaiah is told, look, you go down here in Jerusalem to where they're doing the laundry, and you're going to find Ahaz down there, and you want to tell him, don't be afraid of what's happening north of you. Things are happening that are very bad. These two kings are coming against you, but don't worry, don't have fear, because these two stubs of smoldering firebrands, so don't be afraid of them. Because Aram, that's your northern kingdom way up there in the northeast, because Aram with Ephraim, that would be a northern tribe of the Israelites, because Aram with Ephraim and the son of Remaliah has planned evil against you, saying, let us go up against Judah and terrorize it and make for ourselves a breach in its wall and set up the son of Tabeel as king in the midst of it. So apparently Ahaz has heard about these plans that these two men, Rezin and Pekah, these two kings, are coming down to take him on. Thus says the Lord God, it shall not stand, nor shall it pass, for the head of Aram is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. Now within another 65 years, Ephraim will be shattered so that it is no longer a people, and the head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is the son of Remaliah, or Pekah. If you will not believe, you surely shall not last. So this is Isaiah's word to Ahaz as he's down there overseeing the laundry, I guess. But he's down in that area, and Ahaz goes down and talks to him and says, look, don't be afraid. You don't need to worry about it, that this will be taken care of, and you've got to believe it. If you don't believe this, Ahaz, you're not going to last. That's a pretty tall order for a pagan king, isn't it? I think it is. I mean, Isaiah, and yet God uses Isaiah the prophet to go to the king of God's people, and give that king a message. I so appreciate how God is so very patient all the time with the people of Judah and the people of Israel both, and tries all the time to treat them as errant children, to draw them back into the way of God and to be faithful to him. Then the Lord spoke again to Ahaz, saying, ask a sign for yourself from the Lord, your God, make it deep as Sheol or high as heaven. So Isaiah's not done at that point. He knows that Ahaz may be having a problem believing. So he says, okay, Ahaz, you don't believe it? idols can go take a hike because they're really nothing. He didn't want to have to make that speech. He'd rather have stayed in his waffling zone. Then he said, this is Isaiah speaking now. Then he said, listen now, O house of David, is it too slight a thing for you to try the patience of men that you will try the patience of my God as well? So Isaiah is fed up with this kind of behavior. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. He will eat curds and honey at the time he knows enough to refuse evil and choose good. For before the boy will know enough to refuse evil and choose good, the land whose two kings you dread will be forsaken. So what's familiar to you about this?
Jesus.
Yeah, it's about Jesus, isn't it? Yeah. This is, I believe, Matthew uses this verse. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The whole virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel, which means what?
God with us.
God with us. Meant that back there in Isaiah's time too. However, I think that Isaiah was aiming at something that's, I don't want to say different, but he's aiming at something that has to do with his own time. That is, he's saying, look at Ahaz. There's going to, you just think of this, that there's a young woman, she gets to be with child, and she's going to bear a son. And that son is going to be called Emmanuel. So I'm thinking 9 months. That's the kind of way I look at that and see it. Well, 9 months. This is a period of gestation for a human, so I guess so. He will eat curds and honey at the time he knows enough to refuse evil and choose good. For before the boy will know enough to refuse evil and choose good, the land whose two kings you dread will be forsaken. So something's going to happen that makes it clear that God is with them, Emmanuel, and then in just a little time, I'm guessing not more than 3 or 4 years by the rest of this, that these two kings are going to be gone. They're not going to be a problem anymore. So that's Isaiah's message. Now we pick back up in 2 Kings, the 16th chapter. So Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and deliver me from the hand of King Aram and from the hand of the king of Israel, who are rising up against me. Do you suppose this is what Isaiah had in mind? I don't think so. I think when Isaiah went to Ahaz, he had some other deliverance that God had in mind. But instead, Ahaz, being the sort of fellow of the world that he is, not being able to believe that he should have to do with God and God only, he decides that the thing he needs to do is to take these matters into his hands and send a message. I am your son, I'm your boy. And you've already read, if you've been here and thinking about our chapters in the last couple of chapters, well, you've got this thing where Assyria is already getting into Israel. And I don't know if everybody that's here remembers that, but Assyria was getting into Israel already. It had taken about 5 or 6 cities were named, where they'd already come in and begun to be invasive. Well, of course, Hezekiah knows that Ahaz knows down here in Judah that this has already happened up here in this area around Samaria, north of Samaria, that Assyria, this growing country here, has come down and caused a lot of trouble down here already. And so Ahaz down here in Judah says, let me send somebody up here to this neck of the woods. This is where their capital city was. And we're going to talk to Tiglath-Pileser, and we're just going to encourage military incursion down here. Why don't you come down here and help us? So that's how this is going. And of course, this is our. Did you get one of these, Tracy? Assyrians start to make some trouble. They're not real bad yet, but they come down. So Ahaz, it says, took the silver and gold that was found in the house of the Lord and the treasuries of the king's house, and he sent a present to the king of Assyria. So he sends this present from down here in Judah all the way up into this neighborhood right up here where the centers of power are in Assyria. Ahaz, this goes over to 2 Chronicles 28, and we started this last week, or maybe the week before, I don't remember when we really started to do this, but it's become more and more useful, you might say, that we look not just at the record of Kings, but we look at the record of Chronicles. We don't, and I'd rather not have to go through Kings and then go through the same stuff largely in being Chronicles. So we're going to, as something helps us out of the Chronicles story, we're going to look at it. Well, it turns out this entire chapter, really, of 2 Chronicles 28 helps a lot. Now, I'm not sure I put the whole thing up here, but a lot of it is up here. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, reigned 16 years, this part we know, and he did not do right in the sight of the Lord as David his father had done. But he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, as he also made molten images for the Baals. Moreover, he burned incense in the valley of Ben Hinnom and burned his sons in fire, according to the abominations of the nations whom the Lord had driven out before the sons of Israel. And he sacrificed burnt incense on the high places, on the hills, and under every green tree. So we review that. Wherefore, the Lord his God delivered him into the hand of the king of Aram, and they defeated him and carried away from him a great number of captives and brought them to Damascus. But 1 Kings doesn't tell us, or 2 Kings doesn't tell us that this much had happened. That not only had these men, Pekah and Rezin, come down with their armies, but they had actually done a great deal of damage. They weren't able to overcome him, but your chronicle writer is at pains to tell you about the horrible trouble that they had actually caused. It wasn't overcome, but here's the nature of the damage. They defeated him, that is, they defeated Ahaz's people, and carried away from him a great number of captives and brought them to Damascus. And he was also delivered into the hand of the king of Israel, who inflicted him with heavy casualties. And Pekah, the son of Remaliah, that's your northern king, the Israelite king, at Samaria, that's the king at Samaria, he slew in Judah 120,000 in one day, all valiant men, because they had forsaken the Lord God of their fathers. So these men died, it says right here, because largely there was not fidelity to God. And Zikri, a mighty man of Ephraim, that's again that northern tribe, slew Maaseiah, the king's son, and Azrikam, the ruler of the house, and Elkanah, the second to the king. So he killed a bunch of powerful people. And then it says, the sons of Israel carried away captive of their brethren 200,000 women, sons and daughters. And they took also a great deal of spoil from them and brought the spoil to Samaria. So they went through the land of Judah and gathered up people as they went and took them with them. These were Israelite people who had been brothers, really, of the Judites. And here they are gathering up these people from the southern kingdom and just taking them with. And what will they be? What will be their plight? Will they end up slaves? What will become of them? But it says, but a prophet of the Lord was there, whose name was Oded, and he went out to meet the army which came to Samaria and said to them. So they're all going back north up through Israel, and they get to Samaria, and here Oded stands, this prophet. And he says, behold, because the Lord, the God of your fathers, was angry with Judah, he has delivered them into your hand, and you therefore listen to me. Return the captives whom you captured from your brothers, for the burning anger of the Lord is against you. Then some of the heads of the sons of Ephraim, Azariah, the son of Johanan, Berechiah, the son of Meshillemoth, Jehiziah, the son of Shallum, and Amasa, the son of Hadlai, arose against those who were coming from the battle and said to them, you must not bring the captives in here. For you are proposing to bring upon us guilt against the Lord, adding to our sins and our guilt, for our guilt is great, so that his burning anger is against Israel. So the armed men left the captives and the spoil before the officers and all the assembly. Then the men who were designated by name arose, took the captives, and they clothed all their naked ones from the spoil. And they gave them clothes and sandals, fed them, and gave them drink, anointed them with oil, led all their feeble ones on donkeys, and brought them to Jericho, the city of palm trees, to their brothers. Then they returned to Samaria. I just couldn't leave that part of the story out for you because it's such, to me, it's so touching that a great victory was had by the Israelites. They had really womped it up on their southern brothers, and now they had it well within their purview to be bringing all of the sort of the spoils and the children and the women back to their country to subjugate them and make them slaves. But standing before them was this Oded, and he said, hey, you guys have your own sins to answer for. Don't make things worse for yourself by doing this. And surprisingly, the people to me it is, all these people in the north that can't seem to get their worship straightened out and do the right thing, they make the right decision. There is some kind of conscience there, and they turn. Any comments about that? Have you noticed it before? So the king of Assyria listened to him. This is back up to where we left off, where we were in 2 Kings, the 16th chapter, and it says that Ahaz took this gold and the silver and all this stuff, precious stuff from the king's house, and he sent it up to Assyria to convince the king of Assyria to come down and get Pekah and Reason off his back, so to speak. If you'll just attack them from the other side, that might help you. So it says in verse 9, so the king of Assyria listened to him, that is to Ahaz, and the king of Assyria went up against Damascus and captured it and carried the people of it away into exile to Kir and put Reason to death. So here's your Samaria here. Here's Damascus up here. And he just comes all the way down to Damascus and decimates this town, just basically destroys it and captures it, and takes the king of it away to Kir, which I was not able to really find a place that I thought, well, that's it. I kind of got the feeling that it was clear down in this neck of the woods somewhere. But they removed him from the area. Now, King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser. Now, still our King Ahaz, our guy that doesn't like to serve God, won't even, when a prophet says, hey, how about any sign you want to prove that God is in control here and he can do what he wants, and now listen for instructions. Instead, he says, no, I don't want to test God. That guy, King Ahaz, went up to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and saw the altar which was at Damascus. So, down here in Jerusalem, all right, the Assyrian king and army has come down through here, and they've captured Damascus up here. And they've really relieved me. These people are not pressing on me so badly. He does have, if you the Moabites pressing him, Edom pressing him. So he's really got a lot of trouble. And he's thinking, hopefully, that by bringing the Syrians in, that some of that will be relieved, but it turns out that, in fact, it was not. It says, and King Ahaz sent to Urijah. Once Ahaz is seen, I got to go off subject there. But King Ahaz leaves Jerusalem, goes up here to Damascus, and apparently Tiglath-Pileser has come down from up near Nineveh to take a look at what he captured. I guess that's the reason I would have him doing it. And our brother Ahaz, he thinks, well, I got to go say thank you. At least he's in this neck of the woods. Meet him, perhaps lay eyes on who this is. And so he goes up to see Tiglath-Pileser. And he sees also this big worship arrangement in Damascus. And so this is what happens. King Ahaz sent to Urijah, the priest, the pattern of the altar and its model according to all its workmanship. In other words, he sends back, he's still in Damascus, he writes all this stuff down, he's drawing, he's looking at over here at how all this is arranged, he thinks it's pretty cool, and he's drawing up a picture of this altar and getting exactly the way it wants it, and he folds it up, he gives it to somebody, and says, take that down to Urijah. Urijah is the priest, so Urijah the priest built an altar according to all that King Ahaz had sent from Damascus. Thus Urijah the priest made it before the coming of Ahaz from Damascus. So he gets this being built while he's up here vacationing or whatever it is he's doing up here in Damascus. While that's going on, down south in Jerusalem, Urijah is building this special altar. When the king came from Damascus, the king saw the altar, then the king approached the altar and went up to it and burned his burnt offering and his meal offering and poured his drink offering and sprinkled the blood of his peace offerings on the altar. Anything wrong with that? Just on the face of it, who offers sacrifices? In the temple, who offers sacrifices? Priests. Priests, and particularly those of the house of Aaron. So, the king is not supposed to do this. We just had, last week I think it was, we had a king that decided that he'd done great things, and he ought to be able to sacrifice in the house of the Lord. He went in to burn incense in the Lord's house, and he got leprosy and lived that way for the remainder of his life. And here is old Ahaz. Well, I guess I can do it. So he goes in, makes a new altar, goes into the temple precinct, basically, and offers sacrifice. It says the bronze altar, which was before the Lord. I don't know if there's so many things I read in the Old Testament I don't think twice about. Maybe you're the same way, I don't know. But what does it mean, before the Lord? Does it mean that God is standing there some way? The bronze altar, which is before the Lord. What does that mean?
I would picture back behind a curtain, like
Okay.
in the Holy of Holies.
Yeah. Okay, now we're on it. The temple itself, where you have the holy place and then the Holy of Holies, that's kind of how they thought of the Lord is there. So your bronze altar was right there in front of the holy place, and that's how your temple was arranged. So the bronze altar, which was before the Lord, he brought from the front of the house, from the front of that temple, from between his altar and the house of the Lord. So he had his altar set up out here someplace. Here's the altar of the Lord, the correct one, and here's the temple. So he switches places with these two. He brings the altar of the Lord out here, and he puts his own altar back here beside the house of the Lord. And he put it on the north side of his altar. So he's switching things around in the temple confines, which is strictly against the law. Then King Ahaz commanded Urijah the priest, saying, upon the great altar burn the morning burnt offering and the evening meal offering and the king's burnt offering and his meal offering with the burnt offering of all the people of the land and their meal offering and their drink offering. Not enough to switch them around as in position, but now if you're going to do any worshiping and basically being grateful before God and thanking God as you go about this sacrificial process, you need to do this on my altar, the one I got from Damascus. And sprinkle on it all the blood of the burnt offering, all the blood of the sacrifice, but the bronze altar shall be for me to inquire by. So in other words, he's changed the whole rationale of the temple. You didn't used to inquire by an altar, you inquired by a priest and cast some kind of a Urim and Thummim thing with the high priest's garments that I don't fully understand, but it was done differently, and now he's saying we're going to do it the way the other nations do it. This is how other nations used to do their sacrificing. They were more complex than what this suggests. They usually had some kind of a drainage system, and they would cut the animal open, and his blood would run down here or down that way, and you would read that and say, well, that means this, and silly stuff like that. And this is the kind of thing that what he's doing smacks of. So Urijah the priest did according to all King Ahaz commanded. Then King Ahaz cut off the border of the stands and removed the laver from them. He also took down the sea from the bronze oxen which were under it and put it on a pavement stone. And I don't know if you remember this, but there was this huge stand. We'd start there, and it had three bulls facing outward and on each side, and then this great huge basin set on top of it, and this is where you wash tools and so forth, and also sacrifices as part of your temple function. And so he's taken all that down. He's taken it off of the oxen and just set it on the ground essentially. So and I don't know what he did with the oxen, but anyway, it says probably he's going to use the bronze, would be my guess. They covered the covered way for the Sabbath, which they had built in the house, and the outer entry of the king he removed from the house of the Lord because of the king of Assyria. So apparently, I don't know why that has anything to do with the king of Assyria exactly, unless perhaps he didn't like them doing things that way, and so they had to change it. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaz which he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? So Ahaz slept with his fathers, was buried with his fathers in the city of David, and his son Hezekiah reigned in his place. So there you have the first mention really of Hezekiah, and then he takes this whole chapter, and we'll read through it fairly rapidly, I think, unless we see a good place to slow down. Anytime, by the way, I know that I talk almost nonstop up here, we can keep going, but anytime you have a question, please just throw your hand up, say, hey, slow down a minute. 2 Kings 17, in the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, Hoshea, the son of Elah, became king over Israel and Samaria and reigned 9 years. So big is gone, in comes Hoshea. And this again is where that's going on up here in Samaria. So he did evil in the sight of the Lord. Hoshea did not as the kings of Israel who were before him. It's almost like maybe he wasn't quite as bad. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, so there's another king change. We had Tiglath-Pileser, now here's Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against him, and Hoshea became his servant and paid him tribute. So again, the Assyrians continue to press south, and they're growing in power. They become a very powerful kingdom. And I should have waited to say that until I put this up, but this is where they're coming out of this region, and they're growing and growing and coming further and further south. Eventually, this big green area is Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, who had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and had offered no tribute to the king of Assyria as he had done year by year. So the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. So Hoshea, he doesn't, I guess he thinks that somehow he's going to escape the power of Assyria. My guess is that in sending messengers down to Egypt, perhaps he's going to try to do something similar to what Ahaz done, only opposite to it. I'm going to get So, the king of the Egyptians, to send me some power up this way. Maybe I can get Assyria off my back. I'm so sure I'm going to get it done that Assyria, you want your tribute this year? Sorry. See you later. Didn't work out though. Assyria came down and said, no sir, you don't thumb your nose at me. We're going to take you prisoner. Then the king of Assyria invaded the whole land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria and carried Israel away into exile to Assyria and settled them in Halah and Habor on the river of Gozan and in the cities of the Medes. So he comes in and he takes over great portions of this area and just gathers up as they had done to Judah, only this time nothing stops this Assyrian. He comes in and just gathers up people, scads and scads of these people, and says, guess what? You don't live here anymore. Doesn't kill them. He just says, you're not going to live here anymore. You're coming out this way. So he puts them up in this region. So a long, long way from where they were in Palestine down here. And it's really sad. Those people really don't, I've read things where some people try to make it as if some of these tribes later become the Celts or something like that. And I don't buy it. I don't think they have to do a better job of selling it. Now this came about because the sons of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, who had brought them up from the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and they had feared other gods. It's almost like he's begun to preach. Don't you remember that you all came up out of Egypt? You were slaves down there, and God delivered you by mighty power. And walked in the customs, they walked in the customs of the nations whom the Lord had driven out before the sons of Israel, and in the customs of the kings of Israel, which they had introduced. So, you guys started to behave just exactly as you were told not to. The sons of Israel did things secretly which were not right against the Lord their God. Moreover, they built for themselves high places in all their towns, from watchtower to fortified city. So all along the way, from one town to another, you'd have watchtower out there to help warn things. Maybe you'd use flame signals and so forth from one watchtower to another. But everywhere along the way, you would have a place to go up on a hill somewhere and sacrifice. They set for themselves sacred pillars and ashram on every high hill and under every green tree. And they burned incense on all the high places as the nations did, which the Lord had carried away to exile before them. And they did evil things, provoking the Lord. They served idols concerning which the Lord had said to them, you shall not do this thing. Yet the Lord warned Israel and Judah through all his prophets and every seer, saying, turn from your evil ways and keep my commandments and my statutes, according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, which I sent to you through my servants, the prophets. However, they did not listen, but stiffened their neck like their fathers, who did not believe in the Lord their God. I think this is so key. The problem was they really didn't believe God. Verse 15, they rejected his statutes and his covenant, which he made with their fathers, and his warnings which he warned them. They followed vanity and became vain, went after the idol nations which surrounded them, concerning which the Lord commanded them not to do like them. They forsook all the commandments of the Lord their God, and made for themselves molten images, even 2 calves. You may remember this was the first thing that Jeroboam did when he took all the people away from, or made this barrier, as it were, on this side of the Jordan, if you want to worship, you worship at the calves. You don't need to go down there to the temple any longer. And they made Asherah and worshipped all the host of heaven and served Baal. Then they made their sons and their daughters pass through the fire. What is that exactly? One place that we've already covered tonight says they burned them in the fire. Can you imagine? And practiced divination and enchantments and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord, provoking him. I don't know if any of you have ever thought much about all things like Ouija board, and the Zodiac, things like that. I do. I don't think God approves. I think that he finds it stinking and doesn't want any part of it, and he wants us to not do those kinds of things. So I encourage you, don't find your, don't try to figure out under what sign you were born or what that means. Don't try to have your palm read or those kinds of things. Those are ugly to God. He wants them not. He wants you to rely on him. So the Lord was very angry with Israel and removed them from his sight. None was left except the tribe of Judah. Also Judah did not keep the commandments of the Lord their God, but walked in the customs which Israel had introduced. The Lord rejected all the descendants of Israel and afflicted them, gave them into the hand of the plunderers until he had cast them out of his sight. When he had torn Israel from the house of David, they made Jeroboam, now he's reviewing again about Jeroboam, they made Jeroboam son of Nebat king. Then Jeroboam drove Israel away from following the Lord and made them commit a great sin. The sons of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They did not depart from them until the Lord removed Israel from his sight, as he spoke through his servants the prophets. So Israel was carried away into exile from their own land to Assyria unto this day. This is where our writer begins to kind of grieve, as it were, for what happened to his brothers in the north, the people of Assyria, or the people of Israel, because they had been gathered up and now they are gone. They have been disseminated throughout the world in far, far north and east. The king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from Cutha and from Ava and from Hamath and Sepharvaim and settled them in the cities of Samaria in place of the sons of Israel, so they possessed Samaria and lived in the cities. This is one of the things that, as I grew up going to church and learning about the Old Testament, I knew that Assyria had carried off the northern 10 tribes. I was aware of that. But one of the things that never really been taught me is that not only did that happen, but this king up here in this area, he assigned people from his own towns and sent them down into the land of Palestine, into Israel, and told them, you got to settle that area. At the beginning of their living there, they did not fear the Lord. Therefore, the Lord sent lions among them, which killed some of them. I think that's fascinating that these people come down to settle this area, or to resettle, you might say, this area. And lo and behold, as they try to do this work, the very beasts of the field are against them. So they spoke to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations whom you have carried away into exile in the cities of Samaria do not know the custom of the God of the land, so he has sent lions among them, and behold, they kill them because they do not know the custom of the God of the land. So something wrong down there. They're not worshiping the right gods because they're new to that area. They don't know the gods of that land. This is the way they thought. Of course, we know that that's not correctly thought through, but in any case, that's how they responded to it, and this is what happened. King of Assyria commanded, saying, take there one of the priests whom you have carried into exile, let him go and live there, let him teach them the custom of the God of the land. So one of the priests whom they had carried away into exile from Samaria came and lived at Bethel and taught them how they should fear the Lord. So it comes down to this little town Bethel in this area, almost to the border of Judah. And that priest there begins to teach people, well, you've got to worship Yahweh, Jehovah God, and this is how you do it. Samaria had made, every nation in their cities in which they had lived. The men of Babylon made Succoth, Benoth. The men of Cuth made Nergal. The men of Hamath made Ashima. And the Abites made Nibhaz and Tartak. And the Sepharvites burned their children in the fire to Adramelech and Anamelech and to the gods of Sepharvaim. They also feared the Lord and appointed from among themselves priests of the high places, who acted for them in the houses of the high places. They feared the Lord and served their own gods. According to the custom of the nations from whom they had been carried away into exile. So the people who came to live in the north feared the Lord and worshiped their own gods.
Do we ever know who the priest was that they brought, or the prophet was that they brought down? Would that have been Obed, do you think?
Not to my knowledge, he's not a known guy.
I didn't know if we knew that.
I would say keep your eyes open. You never know.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes you're able to piece things together. But in reading through the Old Testament several times, I'm not aware who he is. To this day, they do according to their earlier customs. They do not fear the Lord, nor do they follow their statutes, or their ordinances, or the law, or the commandments which the Lord commanded the sons of Jacob, whom he named Israel, with whom the Lord made a covenant and commanded them, saying, you shall not fear other gods, nor bow yourselves to them, nor serve them, nor sacrifice to them. I want to stop just a minute. Again, I'm not sure we're really going to get to finish up. I don't think there's a lot left, really, of this passage. But I would point out to you that when Jesus went up to Samaria, he's on his way to Galilee, in the book of John, the 4th chapter, he comes across this woman at Jacob's well, and he has this conversation with her. And, of course, he eventually, as you may remember the story, he tells her, look, I know who your men in your life are, and the husbands, you've had 5, and the guy that you're with right now is not your husband. And finally she's, oh, okay, I know who you are. You're a prophet, you're the Messiah, or actually didn't know that yet, but she comes to know that. And Jesus, it's fascinating when she sort of turns this corner in her thinking, and she starts to ask questions. Jesus says this thing to her, you people, he says, you don't know what you worship. We, down here in Jerusalem, we know what we worship. And if you'll review what's happened to the northern tribes, and a lot really hadn't changed in regard to the way they went about worship, even until Jesus' day, that's why the Samaritans are seen as kind of, that's that other crowd of people that are really not even Israelite people. They learned how to worship God, but they just kind of learned it by word of mouth, and they kept on doing their own things with other gods. And so eventually there does become, however, in Samaritan circles, by the time Jesus is there, kind of a pretty good allegiance to God, but still it's not this thing that can go back and look and say, okay, here's chapter and verse, and we know how we're supposed to behave.